Hello, it's Pop. Dennis Murray again. How are you? I'm going to do a recap today of all the Popcast from 23 to 48. There'll be two parts today and tomorrow, part one and part two. Um, Today I'm going to cover the podcast that talked about awe, that talked about the reasonableness of faith, that talked about wisdom, and that talked about living in the middle, entering the middle and welcoming others there. It's a lot of material, and I'm going to, you know, give it just a skim treatment, just to highlight the stuff that was covered, because it would take too long otherwise. And I invite you to go back and look at the prior podcasts. I haven't quite figured out how to watch the podcast easily in sequence. You can watch them reversely, but it's not so easy to figure out how to get them to play one through, forward. But Betsy, my daughter, tells me that it's not that she is subscribed to my channel, and when she uh, selects them to play, they play in correct sequence, one forward. Um, so I don't know. I'm going to have to learn more about that, and when I do, I'll post it on dennismurray.net. So it'll be a little easier. But so I want to begin with some personal things today. One one of them's pretty happy, and one of them's somber. I sometimes get overwhelmed by my emotions, so I'm going to try pretty hard not to do that. So the good news note is I'm wearing my Cooper's Tavern shirt again, because my family member, Kathy, and her husband, Richard, are going to reopen their restaurant this coming Friday. And my Kathy is the ex daughter in law. She was married to my son, Dennis, for a long time, and they had three wonderful kids together. Um, but, Gail and I decided we'd already lost one daughter and we weren't about to lose another one. So we didn't let the little nicety that she was no longer our daughter-in-law to stop her from continuing to be our daughter. And so a friend of mine spoke of it as daughter in love. So she's that, and her husband Richard's wonderful, and uh, Kathy and Dennis have a very good relationship, and they're both excellent grandparents. And Richard is gets a lot of credit for being a wonderful guy that he is, and he helped smooth everything out. So it's a real grace note to life, when somehow the pain of divorce gets managed and people find their energy and their joy and stay in close relation, and the kids are getting the kindness and love and support they need. And now those two are fabulous grandparents, and so's Richard. Um, the grandkids call him Fritchard because that's how they could pronounce Richard. So instead of Grandpa, he's Richard. So it's all good. So a little harder to deal with. Today is the 22nd anniversary of the day that our daughter Bridget died. She was just 2 weeks out of college, and she used ecstasy and with her girlfriends one night, and she died. Um, she went to NYU, and she was at the Tisch School of the Arts. She really wanted to be an actress, and she had a good deal of talent. She may have made it. Who knows? Um, and so we have her hat, and she was always very fond of her Ernie doll. And she had, a normal sized Ernie doll, about, so big, um, as a little girl. And then when she was a young teenager, I was babysitting the grandbabies, and I, of course, gave them the Ernie doll as a comfort doll, and along with their blankies when it was nap time. And she came to me and said, "It's okay if you let, the grands use my Ernie doll, but it is my Ernie doll, and when I go to college, she's coming with me." And damned if she didn't. And the first thing we did when we set up her dorm room was put Ernie up on a shelf. So then when it comes to graduate, you're not allowed to have any decoration except the approved cap and gown. But her School of Arts and Sciences was given the privilege of graduating in Carnegie Hall. And she just couldn't pass up the opportunity. So she taped this little Ernie doll on top of her mortarboard. And she got away with it because she was Bridget, So it's just a moment to show you some things. So um, she had the opportunity to travel for a whole school semester on a boat where she took college courses in a program called Semester at Sea. And she left from the West Coast and returned to the East Coast. So she went entirely around the world in a semester. And she just went everywhere and saw everything you can imagine during that trip. And these were pictures that were sent to us by her schoolmates and friends from the Semester at Sea after she died. And so, 22 years is a long time. Um, and it still hurts. What can I tell you? This week, Gail and I are celebrating our anniversary. That's, a mixture of joy and sadness. And of course, next Sunday is Father's Day. And ever since Bridget died, Father's Day has been a little tough for me. So it's a strange week. There's a lot of warm, wonderful things going on, and some stuff to accept the emotional load of. And you don't run from it, you don't hide from it, you don't cringe. You put it in the context of all the good stuff that goes on in life. It's part of life. Um, I truly do believe that death is part of life, that we wouldn't appreciate life if we didn't see that we were going to die. We just wouldn't have any way without that contrast to appreciate how precious life is to us. And it's the source of the starting point of awe in our personality. Our gratitude drives us to go behind gratitude and look, and we're looking for someone to be grateful to, so we experience awe and personify it quite often. And, as I already discussed in talking about awe, that, my wife, Gal, starts with the belief in God, and she doesn't go behind it to awe. It's just not the way she was brought up, and it's not the sort of thing she wants to do at this stage in her life. And this was, some years back when I first started writing about this, and we talked about it. And of course, my daughter Betsy starts from gratitude, and she doesn't feel the need to go behind gratitude to awe. She just starts from there and goes from there. So, aw's a little more complicated than I first thought, and I have to read and study more about it. You'd think after all these years of thinking and talking about it, I wouldn't have to do that, but I do. And I am also going to send a questionnaire around to all my friends and family and ask them to talk to me about their experiences. And so there will be more to come on that. I have decided I am going to take off not just Wednesday, but Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I'm a little beat up, and I need to be accepting that and dealing with that. And I need to recoup my strength for what we're going to start with next. So I did, on a very happy note, I did discover that next I want to talk about living in the middle in terms of reforming the economy. And I think it's a really good way to give a practical example about living in the middle and about applying our newfound appreciation of how important our social life is, our sociality is, and that we need to revise the way business is conducted to preserve its present emphasis on self and self-interest, but to put that in the proper context also of self and society, and our our social aspect along with our personal aspect and our family aspect. So more attention to the community and to family and the way business is organized. It'll be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it, and I'll have some time this weekend to organize, my notes and start next Monday. The recap. So basically, it talked about awe. I talked about the reasonableness of faith. I talked about wisdom and the middle. And as far as awe goes, I watched all of the podcasts and I realized how, it's presented in bits and pieces. As the words occurred to me, something else I was talking about led me to a different phrase. So I've reorganized it here. And I'm going to rattle off a bunch of things about it. The words are inadequate to express or define awe. It's a mix of fear and wonder. It's a psychological experience. It's an intuition of creative goodness at work in the universe and in each of us and in each other. It's the core of our inherited psychology. It's shared and experienced of all, but it may feel different to many of us. My own experience of awe is that I feel like there's this creative goodness alive in me and at work in the universe, and that I feel warm and welcome. I feel like I'm welcomed to the universe, to this creative goodness, and I feel like I belong, and I feel safe, and I feel connected, not only to my own core, but to others. And Jung would say, your conscious has to get connected to your unconscious for you to have some wholeness. And I think that this experience of all that I have does that for me. And at least it, begins a lifetime process. I don't think you ever finish that work. But like so many of the most important aspects of life, finishing them isn't actually that important. It's being in the process that's more important. There are specific objectives that one likes to meet from time to time if you're able to. But the even more important than how many objectives you might meet in your life or exactly which ones you choose to meet is that at all of your life, you're in process. You're working on this. You're aware. And this is true for your relation to your interior self, to your unconscious, but it's in your relation to others, certainly. And your judgment of yourself is never finished till your last breath. And we'll find out soon enough after that whether there's a subsequent judgment to come and how well you did. And I think you just have to live your life with gratitude, with awe, and turn to each other, and don't worry too much about all the stupid, things you did and all the wrong things you did. You just keep on that process, and you'll be okay. And I do think when you get old, and you look back on your life, you will essentially make a judgment of yourself, and the judgment is how much of that connection to others that all gives you did you work on? Not did you succeed, because there's too much chance in life to let your success in meeting goals or objectives be the measure of whether you've had a well-lived life, but how much you tried, how much of your stuff you brought to the core, to the to the surface and tried to work with, and in this process of connecting to others. That's what I found, and as you know, it's my opinion that my wisdom is not necessarily your wisdom, that you need to go deep inside yourself to an experience of awe and come back out with your own wisdom. Yourself, you're going to interpret awe differently than I do. And when we're going to talk about living in the middle, this is the key. I can't give you a set of words, and you can't find from any other source a set of words that's adequate to tell you how to live in the middle. Um, so you've refreshed your sense of connection that comes with it. So you've entered the middle, and now you're trying to figure out how to live there, and particularly how to live in relation to the people who are on the extremes that you would like to draw towards the middle. And so, you go searching for advice, but the facts are so complicated that you face in making a particular decision that advice isn't worth that much. And part of the facts is your own life history and your own personality type and your own complexities, and the life history and complexity and personality types of the person that you're dealing with, as your marriage partner or as somebody on an extreme that's a good friend and you would like to bring them back towards the center, or somebody you don't know who's an extreme that you're in in some kind of contact with, and you'd like to have it be a fruitful relation. Um, so I think on the one hand, you have enough wisdom in yourself to make adequate decisions to live by in such a way that at the end of your life, you'll feel like you had a well-lived life and you didn't make too many dumb mistakes and they weren't from lack of trying. Um, and I think the flip side is that advice from others is just too inadequate because their facts and their personality type and their history and their interpretation of all is just too different. That's not an adequate guide for you. Um, there are things where you can go get sort of enmeshed in other people's wisdom and think about it. It may help shed some light for you in trying to find your own, like the Bible and the Talmud and all the other sacred writings of the world. Um, and, uh, there's plenty of other sources of material that you think have some wisdom value. Um, but just to show you that you can't rely on a set of words you may find someplace to answer all the particulars of your life is, the 10 Commandments are just 10 and they're just a few lines long. And there's 10,000 books every 100 years written about them. And the Talmud is the same. It's essentially five, a short section of the Old Testament. And there's, goodness, a huge library full of books written about it, interpreting it. And the same with the law. The laws of any state have grown over the centuries, and the interpretations given to those laws, they fill all the walls of every lawyer's office in the country, at least when I was practicing. Nowadays, it's all on computers, so, what the hell. But I've been gone for 30 years from my practice, so a lot's changed, and that's fine. Um, we didn't even have a copy machine. We just bought a copy machine, a big one, it cost a fortune. And we didn't have a fax machine. We used couriers when we wanted to send papers to each other in a hurry. And so, I'm really old school, so forgive me. So let me see if I've covered most of this. Of course, a lot of people personify awe and call it, by some of the names of God. Um, and I think that that's reasonable, to do that if that's what you find is going on in your heart, in your soul. Um, we can't forget that awe is an intuition, it's a psychological experience. Intuitions are often wrong, so that and it's of course a mix of fear and wonder, so it's kind of scary, makes it hard to be, all that wise in the face of being both struck by wonder and struck by fear. Um, you got to remember to breathe in that context first, and you find wisdom in small doses later. Um, so you're having this experience, and it feels very much like it's a personal God calling to you. Um, so my wisdom is that that's a perfectly reasonable thing to do for a number of things about the way our psychology has evolved. That most assuredly, this awe is a psychological reality, and we live from our psychology. Um, so whether or not it's an external reality, a God that exists outside of the universe and caused the universe to be and was kind enough to put us in it, um, that doesn't change the fact that it's a psychological reality. We very strongly live from our psychology, which is a mix of objective and subjective we have. And this is a subjective experience that objectively we can't prove, but seems reasonable to believe if you choose to do so. But try and remember that it's a belief, it's not knowledge. You can't know, in my opinion, others disagree, but in my opinion, you can't have knowledge of this. You only have belief. And somebody said in one of the readings I did recently, that's why they call it faith. You look in different books for knowledge. When you look in religious books, you're looking for faith. And so it's something where you remember that you've chosen to believe that this is an external reality, and you've given it the name of one of the names of God. Um, but it's always just a belief. It's not something that you can know. That's my wisdom. There are people who disagree about that. And so this in my opinion, this psychological reality is strong enough, and we live from our psychology. So this reality at the core that we live from, we are wise to trust it enough to live by it, even though we can't prove it. So whether or not we call it an external reality, it's still a psychological reality that we live from, and we trust it enough to live by it, even though we can't prove it. We can't prove we should trust it. We can't prove it's real, but it feels real, and we live from those feelings. That's that's what my wisdom on the thing is. It seems to give us inspiration and direction. The inspiration is in the form of the energy of hope, and the direction is in the form of turn to each other. And the golden rule is treat other people the way you want to be treated, or a variety of phrases of a similar nature. But this is saying, somewhat the same thing, but somewhat differently. The emphasis on turn towards each other, and not so selfishly the way you want to be treated, but more than that, more positively, that it's only in each other that you gain the comfort and security you need to face the life you've been given, because of death, hate, and the necessity to work and unfairness in the universe that you confront. You simply cannot thrive without the comfort and security of discovering that others have the same experience of awe, and that together you're able to deal with death, hate, necessity, and unfairness. And so the the emphasis here on turning to each other is a little more positive a little more assertive of your sociality. It's not just that, well, wouldn't it be nice to be treated like, I'd like to be treated. Um, it's more than that. You need to do this. You need to turn to them. You need to give to them and you need to receive from them. It's a real two-way street, and it's from an aggressive need that we've been given as a species. And whether we get it from nature or there's an external God who stands behind nature and gave it to us, um, doesn't change that we seem to have been given that, and we live from what our psychology tells us we need to live from, and this is part of it. This realization that we can't thrive, we can't survive as a species without the gift of each other, and this all gives us a sense of connection that leads us more strongly to each other. I've already gone longer than I wanted to, so I'll finish some more of this tomorrow when I only I have less to do tomorrow before, so I'm just going to add this on to tomorrow and we'll be okay. So enough for today. See you tomorrow. We'll finish the recap. Take care.